Now with us is Eric Moynihan, the co-founder of Magpie Brewery, which is where we are fortunate enough to be
Thanks for
today.
having us.
Hey,
Thank
no
you.
You guys are always welcome.
So now it's kind of a little introduction for people who may not know about Magpie Brewery. It was founded in Seoul in 2012 as a home brewing studio in Itaewon. Is that
right.
correct?
Yeah.
And then you opened your second location here in Jeju in 2014, and you opened the Jeju Brewery, which is where we are currently, in 2016.
Yeah, that's right.
And in 2018, CNN added that Magpie, is it the coolest brewery in Asia?
I mean,
Did they
that's
really say that?
subjective. Yeah.
That's my
That's
opening
awesome.
question.
I've
Is
never-
Magpie Brewery the coolest?
Yeah. I mean, it's all subjective, right? But I mean, I've got more phone calls after that came out from people being like, "Really, Eric? Really, Eric?" I was just like, "I didn't write it. I didn't say this. This is yeah."
Oh gosh,
But,
I don't even remember that. That's
yeah,
one hell of
that was-
an
quite a
accolade.
headline.
Yeah.
exactly.
And then the art, it's very small,
Yeah.
and it was like it was more of a video, wasn't it? No.
Oh yeah, they did some video, yeah, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Good job.
Pretty interesting. Yeah.
It is a pretty cool brewery because, like, for some of us who have been here for a little bit longer, it was a dearth of craft beer
Certainly.
in Korea, especially on
Jeju.
Jeju, right?
Yeah.
So when you guys came here, it was like finally
Oh, it was
something.
huge.
Cass and
It was huge.
what's the other one? I was going to use the
Well, we had
Cass and
Boris.
Height.
Yeah.
sure.
And Boris
We had
Brewery.
Boris Brewery.
Oh, yeah, that's
do you
right.
remember?
Yeah, Boris is awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When he left, you guys filled a much needed hole
Sure.
for.
I think there was a little bit of a
people.
gap, right, between he
yeah,
had been
a
gone for
sizable.
maybe 6 or 12 months, something
Yeah,
like that,
yeah.
and then Magpie kind of
Yeah.
came in. But yeah, we had met him before,
Yeah,
but
he's-
his advice was like, "Don't do it." Yeah, he's just
Well,
like,
I mean,
"It's
he was
not
just-
worth it. It's such a pain." And
He
your
was just one
landlords
guy
and
doing that.
sure.
Yeah, he was such a
He was like an accomplished brewer who was
Mm-hmm.
quite won many awards, and every time I went there, he was quite curmudgeonly about the conditions. But that's kind of interesting because your company has kind of either been upon the wave of craft beer or in Korea, or was kind of the starting it.
I think, when we started, there wasn't much, like you were saying. And I think that when we first started, it was kind of like a home brewing studio. It was kind of our research laboratory. We made a bunch of recipes, and then we brought them to other breweries, like bigger breweries, to make them for us. And I think that we sort of showed that the guys who really liked craft beer, it's possible. You can do this. There are enough people that are interested and want to kind of learn about beer or experience beer, whatever that is. And so, I think that we kind of showed them that hey, the door's open. Let's
do that.
Let's all get into
When
it.
they were making your beers at their place, were you then taking them back to your?
Yeah,
is
so
that how
we
that
couldn't
was
sell
working?
all the
You
beers
were-
that we made in the sort of studio area in Haebangchon. We couldn't sell any of that beer. That was just for recipe development,
Just for fun
for
and-
home
okay,
brewing.
okay.
And then so we'd build a recipe we really liked, bring it out to their factory, brew it with them, hopefully tweak it to get it where we wanted it to be. It's not easy, and brewing is 50% art, 50% science. There's a lot that goes into it there. And then they'd brew it there, and then they'd deliver it back to us, and we could sell that
That's really
beer.
cool.
Yeah.
And that was what was allowed by the government at that time.
Yeah, so at the time, actually, just as we got our business license, let's say the week before, or the month before, they changed the law to say that originally you couldn't you couldn't distribute the beer outside of the locations. So if you were a brewery, you could sell it only at your location, and then they changed the law saying, you can now distribute the beer around the country. Anybody who wants to sell your beer can sell your beer. And then we basically could open our Magpie Brewing Company. They could make our recipe and sell it back to us.
And so, just based on that, you talking about, this is a question that everyone has been asking around town. When are the cans going to be able to be sold at any CU?
We can
or is
sell
that
them at the
something you
CU.
want? You can.
The problem is that they only want to sell them at 4 for $10. And so it's too cheap. The price point is we have to sell them our cans at $1.60, Sanjupek one is what we have to sell them to.
Okay.
And we don't make a beer that can be done that well. That's actually, to be honest, that's the main hurdle, but the second hurdle is that they don't do cold chain distribution. So
what does that mean?
It's basically, cold chain means the beer from the brewery is always kept cold until it gets to your glass. So we don't do filtration, we don't have pasteurization, anything like that, and so the beer quality
That's a
can
big
change
deal.
drastically. So when you go to a 7-Eleven, a CU Mart, basically they have in their back room stacks of beer that's sitting there, maybe next to the exhaust fan,
yes.
maybe on their loading dock. You don't really know how they're treating the beer,
That's
and then so
important.
it goes into the fridge after that, and then gets cold for when you buy it. I mean, sometimes you'll go to I've been to Humdock, and the beer will be warm coming out of the fridge because people are buying it so much
quickly, yes.
that they're only loading the warm beer into the fridge. So yeah, since they don't have that, that's actually a pretty huge issue.
That is a big issue.
Yeah.
Okay, well
And
that's an
so-
answer that
Also-
everyone's going to be wondering.
4 cans from Manon is obsolete nowadays,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
4 for $11.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
it's
going
going up.
higher and higher.
Inflation.
Yeah, exactly.
It got a little too popular.
I mean, I do think in the next year, I would anticipate that you will see a change. I think that
I also-
we've had some conversations with people, 3 for 10, 3 for 11 small cans, the 355 cans, 2 for 11 has been a conversation, and so I think
Different
that will
things.
start to open up a little bit. Yeah, I think customers are kind of tired. I think at the 4 for 11 prices, you're not seeing anybody really breaking the mold on making really great beers. They're just good beers that are out there, and at that price point, you just can't really do too much else.
I think there was especially back when all the beers were first coming, and then the 4 for 10s, when they were all happening, it was so exciting because
Yeah,
you had
sure.
never seen any of these
Great.
beers, especially on Jeju.
Yeah.
You'd never seen any of the beers, but I had to ask about the cans because we were talking about the distribution. But how many owners are there of Magpie?
It's kind of complicated. We started off with there was 5 of us,
And you guys were all good friends.
and all friends, from the neighborhood.
Yeah.
It was kind of, what is it? There was 3 of us that started, and that was me, Jason, and Tiffany. And we were homebrewing together, and that's kind of where we came up with the idea of what we wanted to do. And then we said, well, let's talk to friends about investing in opening the shop. And basically, Hassan was the first person to talk to, and Hassan said, don't talk to anybody else. You don't need to talk to
I'm your
anybody else.
man.
I'm your
I'm your
man, and
man.
we're going to get this done kind of thing. And so
Okay.
we started from there. At one point, Jason sold a little bit of his shares to another friend.
Okay.
And so Sydney, I don't know if you ever met Sydney, she's
think so.
awesome.
Okay.
And so Sydney became a part owner. She's really minority.
Okay.
And then when we moved down to Jeju, the Aurario group was our partners,
Yeah.
but weren't owners. They were just
Okay.
partners on the space.
Okay.
And then we actually had a long conversation with SPC, Paris Baguette, tried to
Okay.
buy Magpie.
Oh, I didn't know that. Hey, you got the scoop here.
We said no. We ended up walking away from it, but we went to Aurario and said, look, we do need cash.
Yeah.
Running the brewery is way more cash intensive than we thought, and so we need to get a little bit of a cash injection to kind of keep the business going and where we want to go with it. And they said, yeah, sure, no problem.
Yeah.
We'd love to be a part of it. So they came in as an investor
Yeah.
afterwards, and that's it. There's no other investors.
That's
we take that for.
That was a really cool. It was really cool for the Tap Dong area, right?
Yeah.
Their investment in it and what they were trying to do. Especially
Yeah.
the owner,
They're
very interesting,
awesome group of people.
Really,
We got
really,
super
they really
lucky.
tried so much down in the Tap Dong to
Yeah.
make that, and they did a successful job.
Yeah.
Might I say?
Yeah, definitely.
So what was the beer that you made? Your first beer, or the one that you were like, okay, you know what? This is a cash cow.
Our pale ale. I mean, our pale ale is still the #1 selling beer we have, despite the fact that it's we based it loosely off of Sierra Nevada pale ale because it's the beer that's my go-to beer back home. We said, at the time when we started brewing through Cabrew, they said you can make a beer. You can't make 10 beers. You can't even make 3 bears. You can make a beer. And so we're like, well, what beer do we want to drink every day?
Right.
It's pale ale. So
Okay.
we tweaked it a little bit. We only have so many ingredients we can get here. We only have so many hops we could get here and everything like that. So we tried to make it our own a little bit, but then also kind of hamstrung by the ingredient that was available. I remember that. And so so our pale ale, but the recipe's been adjusted a little bit. There's a little bit where every time a new brewer comes in, they want to tweak it a little bit, but there's also when I'm saying well, no, it tastes a little too different, but it's like a nostalgia. The original beer probably tasted disgusting if we drank it today, but for the time it was so hoppy and so rich and so much flavor that it broke the mold of what was being made.
Yeah.
But I'm sure that today's pale ale and then the pale ale from 2012 has probably evolved so much.
Do you continue to tweak the beers as they're canned here before us?
Yep.
But does that mean they're finished, they're complete, or do you continue to be?
I would say probably 90%. I don't think most people wouldn't notice the tweaks.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's different yeast strains that will have to kind of adjust or something like that. Actually, the porter has had a few different yeast strains, but it's such a small difference that I'd say 90% wouldn't notice the difference.
Okay.
Maybe if you're a diehard porter fan, you'd be like, oh, it's a little bit more fruitier than it was before. But that is it's like a coffee nuance, on Yeah, it's not a super.
And you'd have to probably be drinking it on a regular basis to really.
Sure.
Not that
The porter
people
is
don't.
my favorite.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's my absolute favorite.
Yeah.
Well, even the flavors of beer changes. Like if I'm hungry, like
Oh,
the
yeah.
way you appreciate the flavor of beer is different than when you're full. Or if you had spicy food, it all kind of plays into that. But we're trying to go in for this overall arc where it doesn't really feel that different.
Yeah.
So in 2014, you came to Jeju.
Mm-hmm.
Why?
That was the Arario guys.
Okay.
The group from Arario, they had started to develop Tapdong like you were talking about, and they were really keen on having a beer brewery in Tapdong.
So they're like a development company?
Yeah, they're a family-run business that they basically are property investors, but they're really famous in Cheonan, and so the Cheonan area is where their home base is, and they had property there. That property was adjacent to the the bus depot in Cheonan, and so it was like a hub, and so they built a huge building and they licensed the Shinsegae department store name.
Right.
So that Shinsegae department store is the only operated by Shinsegae department store.
Oh, that's really
So they
interesting.
licensed that, and
was a
then from
smart
there
move.
they started developing on other real estate. But they're almost more famous for being art collectors.
That's what I was.
So that's it.
Yeah.
He's C. Kim, the founder and sort of creator of the Arario Group. He's listed as probably top 100 contemporary art collectors globally,
He's
at least in Asia.
such
he
an
focuses
intriguing man.
a lot on Asian artwork as well too, and getting this new contemporary art from all over Southeast Asia.
And he tasted your beer and he's like, I want to add that to my collection.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
Well, what's really cool is so they also invest in small
Yes.
artists, right? They do have an agency for artists, but that's kind of the way they treat Magpie as investors. They're like, look,
This
you
is
guys
your
do
art.
this, and we don't want to tell you what to do. We send them, a yearly financial statement, but as long as everything's going well, it's more about what else can we help you with? Is there any introductions you need? Anything you guys need to do? They've been super the best investors you could ask for.
And really smart on their end, to be honest, because when Magpie, your old building, opened in Tapdong, man, the influx of people to that area, which was previously once just, young kids and nothing was happening, outside that little area where kids were running around. But it was a really smart move. And then then the museum, and then it really, really good. Yeah, Magpie
definitely.
really. When Magpie came down, things just started. It became less. I don't want to say that, but less.
Chunde?
Well, it was a big impact for Jeju, and things started looking a little bit different on the island.
There was also Just Be Beer at the time.
Yeah,
which was,
yeah.
Government run.
Yeah.
And then it's gone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty much now.
Yeah,
We
I
don't-
think
yeah.
they still have a facility
They
sitting
do.
somewhere.
Yes, somewhere
collecting
empty,
dust,
probably.
maybe,
Yeah,
I'm not
yeah,
sure.
which is a shame. But
It's. I like to say this word a lot when it comes to beer. It's interesting to see that your company, when we were talking about before, it was riding this wave. But at the same time, that part of that wave was this multiculturalism that was going on at the same time.
Yeah.
And so I guess what my question kind of is what if your beer is Western and what if it is Korean?
Yeah, it's really interesting because it's something, I don't want to say we battle with it. We think about it a lot as what makes our beer Korean, and we do some export. We go to a lot of international events and everything like that. But it's my pale ale is made with German and Danish malts and American hops. What about that is Korean? And also, when we're deciding what our new beers are going to be, it's hard because the Korean market it's not America. It's not New York. It's not California that knows about all this craft beer. Denmark was crazy for craft beer too. It's not one of these craft beer hubs like that where there's a ton of people that are clamoring for really innovative. We sell more of the sort of more simple styles where they're simple and drinkable and clean, and we try to have a few experimental things that are in there. So it's kind of it's Korean in the fact that it's made for Koreans, it's made for a Korean population.
Okay.
We don't necessarily try to dumb things down. It's more just about exposure where we're saying we're choosing these beer recipes, we're making them where we're saying hey, these are classic styles. These are things that are really awesome. Try this and see what it is. And we also, Ethan, our head brewer, we like classic simple styles more than we like the new trendy styles. But our younger brewing team wants more of the new trendy stuff. So it's a nice balance actually that we get from that.
Yeah.
We do try to use Korean ingredients and things like that whenever we can.
But you're not making dangkong, udo dangkong.
Yeah,
beer or something.
we've used it before. We had a beer called the Little one, and it was like a peanut
I
brown
remember
ale that we
one,
made.
yeah.
And so we try to like, what could we do to use this in a way, but we don't try to just like, ride too heavily on that,
Right.
where it's like almost like cliche. I mean, we get asked, every beer we make for someone off the island is always like, can you add orange? Can you use
Right.
Jeju
I
orange?
was
And we're like,
that was going to be my next.
I didn't want to
yeah,
say that
you
because
did.
you may actually be working
well,
on
we
a
do,
danger, like a
we
Jeju
do.
beer.
And I mean, I like using tangerine beer. Citrus in beer works really well.
It really
so
does.
I'm not against it. It's just when it's like every request, you're like,
Yeah, you're like, we
we
don't
can
want
do something else.
We don't want to be
like there
locked
are
into
other
that, yeah.
ideas we
Yeah.
can do. So,
But it is. I could see why people would want to request that because it is a uniquely Jeju thing.
Well, that's why we have,
and
like,
it is tasty.
Makgeolli, Jeju makgeolli with
Yeah.
gamgyo tangerine
Yeah,
in
sure.
it. It's
Yeah.
not very good.
yeah.
It's not very
It really
good.
I mean,
is.
I think we actually. It's funny because we struggle using tangerine in beers. Is like, well, how do you use the ingredient? The fresh are obviously amazing, but almost all of the sort of processed goods you get from it are terrible. And it's just, I don't know if it's just that no one's processing them in a way that balances for beer, or you end up with these like either really kind of chemically or cloying, or just not a great flavor that expresses how great the tangerines
The actual
are,
taste
or,
is,
or
right.
the hellebong or anything
Right,
like that.
right.
So
Yes.
yeah, we spend a lot of time thinking about that and trying to find ways to use it in ways that are good. Unfortunately, the best way we found is we have like 6 juicers in the brewery, and it's just all hands on deck juicing oranges to get like fresh
Just
fruit.
go. Oh my
But
God.
it's like,
can you just
Oh,
everybody
it's,
line up?
yeah,
This
your
is what we're
hands
doing
are all,
today.
like, wrinkled and,
Fruity
like,
you
acidy.
smell like tangerines for the best. You mentioned this is something that I know you fairly well now for many years. One thing I didn't realize is that you do collaboration. I knew this a while ago, but when did that start, that you started making collaborations with other organizations and other businesses?
I mean, it's always kind of been something
You've
that
always-
we do
okay,
because I mean,
okay.
I think we try to say like the Magpie core values are like culture, community, craftsmanship. That's what we try to like rely on a lot. So we always are looking at like small fashion designers that are Korean fashion designers that we do like VIP sweatshirts for our team like every Christmas. That's part of the things we do. Vans, the skateboard company,
That was a cool one, yeah.
they called us and said, we've got these events coming up. Do you think you could make us a custom beer? So we do some like beer collaborations, which is really traditional. Every brewery does collaborations with
that's
other
good to
breweries.
know. Okay.
We've always actually focused more on the non-beer collaborations. We do those too. I'm trying to think of what's a good example. We did a beer called Torak Torak, which is like, tap you on the shoulder. We did it for a mental health association where we collaborated with Issei is a clothing brand here. They're American guys, second generation. They kind of
Okay.
made here like, these clothes that are based off of like Korean fabrics or Korean dyeing
That's
techniques.
cool.
And then a tattoo artist that did like the designs. We made this jacket that was like all
That
embroidered.
jacket was so
It's
badass.
pretty awesome. Yeah, and then we said we
yes.
made a beer that went with it, and then
Yeah.
all the proceeds from the beer
Okay.
went to this mental health association.
And when you
Suicide
do
prevention.
when
as
you
well.
do beers like that, you really just give them the beer. You really can't find
it depends.
it here in house. Or
We usually do them as small batches.
Okay.
So like that's a one batch. I think the Torak
One
beer
off.
sold out in like 2 or 3 weeks. It sold out
Jeez.
really quickly.
Oh, that's cool.
We do also stuff though, like for like Nine Bridge Golf Course. We make a beer for them where
Right.
that's not so much collaboration. We kind of call it more like OEM, or like white label, where. Actually, it's not really white label because it's not like a beer we make that they can stick their label on.
Right.
We sit down with them. What do you want
But
the
it's
beer
their
to be?
house
And we
beer.
make it, and it just says like made by Magpie
Right.
on the
Okay,
barcode. It's
okay,
not really like a
okay.
Magpie.
It's like you're commissioned to
X.
make the beer for them.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and so
okay, okay.
we started most of that actually during COVID because it helped us fill volume that wasn't being distributed to like all the bars and restaurants that normally carry our products, and actually it carried us through quite well. Like
Good.
we made very few layoffs. We had to do a few things where we people would like sort of stay home for 70% pay for a week or two.
Yeah.
But we really didn't lay off too many people.
That's
I mean,
good.
part-time staff got reduced, but we didn't have to let go of too many people.
That's good. So COVID, you were able to kind of ride that wave as much
Yeah,
as
it was challenging and
Yeah, I
hard,
can't-
and I mean,
can't
we
imagine
came
the
out of it with
stress.
a lot of debt that we had to pay off. But I mean, last year we kind of we got lucky in the fact that before COVID, we were actually in kind of like a pausing. We were trying to slow the boat down a little bit because we were overspending on a lot of stuff. We said, look, let's just simplify everything. So luckily, that was actually a very big
timed
cutting.
well.
And then, when COVID came out, it was just kind of like, okay, well, luckily we're down to like foundations now
Okay.
that COVID was okay for us.
So I'm curious because I had to write a lot about pandemic, especially
Yeah.
when it started. So it started December 2019. When did it start to affect your business directly?
I don't know exactly. I would say it was a little bit, I mean, it was kind of like one of those things where it was definitely a slowing down because people weren't sure how serious we had to take it.
Right.
And was it a big deal or not?
Right.
When the government restrictions started coming in,
The
I mean, that was just
curfew,
like the
right?
hard stop.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden things were really...
Especially for Seoul.
Yeah, and then we just
Because
kind of
Jeju, we were living our best
Yeah.
life down
Yeah.
here. We
Yeah.
I remember seeing on your Instagram, hey, everybody, we're now on this curfew, Magpie, you know, all the restaurants.
Yeah.
But here, down here, we were just like, well,
Well, I mean,
you know,
Jeju kept us
we-
afloat. Like, I mean,
Okay,
honestly, like, even
okay.
besides that slowing
Okay.
down, if it wasn't for Jeju, like,
It would've-
Magpie would have, I mean, I don't know if we would have had to close, but at
something.
least it would have been more drastic measures we would have had to take.
It's-
But yeah, we kind of like rolled through the pandemic using Jeju as a
And
stronghold.
the Vans collaboration was for the rest. Correct me if I'm wrong. There was something you did that was giving money back to restaurants.
What did we do for that
you
one? Well,
remember
that was so they did
Something?
an event that was called what was it called? Foot the Bill
Foot
was
the
their
Bill.
program. So what
With the
they did
shoes,
is
right?
we made a custom Magpie designed shoe.
That's right.
And then basically, if you bought that shoe online,
Yeah.
half the money came
Yeah.
back to Magpie
Yeah.
for it. So it was a
Okay.
nice thing. I forget we sold like 500 or 600 pairs
Yeah,
of
it
shoes or
was
something
amazing.
like that. So it was really cool.
One of the things I really like about Jeju, not just the beer, but like you said, it's the community. And then what was the third? The community
Culture,
culture.
craftsmanship.
And one of the I've always just really adored about Magpie is the culture part of it, like the posters and the events and the art that
Well,
sort of seems to tie into Magpie.
You know,
so
even before we had cans of beer, where it makes sense, you have to put something
have
on
to
the
have the art,
can. We tried to make the posters
The posters
because
so cool.
it kind of like it makes the beer have a little bit more of a character or a little bit more of sort of a story. You know, you can tell. Well, why did we make this beer? Well, for instance, Dongne Chingu, Old Pal's Pilsner that we make. That beer, it's like
Yeah.
the idea is that it's like an old friend, you know, like everyone knows Pilsner style, German Pilsner. And so we just make it our kind of twist and make it something where, you know, the story of it being like, it's always going to be around.
Right.
It's that old friend,
Right.
you know?
So that was leading to actually something that I wanted to talk to you about, which is where does a beer come from? We were talking about ingredients before. Do you start with the ingredients? Do you start with the idea? Do you start with an image? Like how does
Usually concepts. Sometimes we'll have like a name that kind of comes up that we're like, oh, what beer matches this name?
That's cool.
But
Yeah,
not,
yeah.
it's
Okay.
not often. Usually the name comes after where we say, this is what we're going to try to do for the beer.
And that's where your head brewer really comes in, right? With the
100%.
ideas, and that's why they.
Yep. And I mean, coming up with ideas, but also just without Ethan executing
Yes,
those ideas is impossible.
you would be, yeah. And he seems to have like just he's quite talented. Like
He's
when
awesome.
you guys
Yeah.
hired him, it was really fun to see
And
like.
who is your beer meister?
Oh yeah, sorry.
Yeah,
we
so
should probably say his name.
Ethan Katz is he comes from the U.S. We took him from Washington D.C. is where he was based, but he's kind of from upstate New
kidnapped
York.
him,
Kidnapped him,
You're
just
like,
bag
come
over
on,
the head.
come
and
on,
here, come over
Ethan,
here.
let's get over here.
No, there's like a kind of international job posting board for brewing positions, and so we posted up on there, and he replied, and we interviewed a few candidates, but Ethan kind of, I mean, it was lucky because I had actually drank beer from the breweries he worked at,
cool.
so I kind of had an idea of like what
What
they
his-
make and being
okay.
like, oh yeah, like these
Yeah.
are definitely beers that
Yeah.
are kind of our vibe and our style. So yeah, he came over and. Yeah, it's always a little bit of like a getting settled where
Yes.
you've got to kind of like go through and clean the cobwebs out and sort of find
And
the new things you
switch
can
and-
do
yeah, yeah.
and tweak things.
Yeah.
But I mean, the core lineup doesn't change too much, just like some subtle
Which is
tweaks.
nice,
But then
right.
the new rotating beers really kind of takes his culture.
Yeah,
and
that's
kind of
cool.
like what he
What
wants
has
to do
been
with it.
your favorite of his beers?
That's a good question.
I really, because he's just made some really good ones.
The beer that stands out the most is we did the Canceled Flights, which was the sort of like
Oh,
that was a
yes.
collaboration with some breweries in Vietnam,
Right.
and so we used like a lot of Vietnamese herbs and things in a
Yeah.
hazy IPA.
That was
he
really
will
cool.
slap me for this because
Oh, yeah?
he doesn't like hazy IPAs,
Yeah.
and so yeah.
Even the can on that
Trying to
was
look
really,
around.
yeah,
What
I
else
was like,
really
seeing-
good that we
yeah.
make that. I mean, Bring Spring is also one of my
Oh.
favorite beers every year we make. I like
And
saisons a lot.
people wait for that one. Everyone's like, it's time. Oh yeah. I'm going to say this wrong. The Malbach.
Maybach,
Did
yeah.
is this year's? Is it much of a change, or is it pretty much the same?
It's a big difference, I think, than the
Is
previous
it?
years.
Okay, I'm
Yeah, for
excited.
sure.
That's why we're doing it here today, so I can have a sip of that.
Nice. It's good. It's like, I mean, it's such kind of a boring beer style, just malty, and
Okay.
it doesn't have a
Oh,
lot of
really?
like nuance. I think compared to a lot of the beers
Yeah,
we make,
yeah.
but it's
Okay.
also so easy to drink. And
Yeah,
it's so
it's-
good. Like it's just
yeah.
so easy, so simple.
It's a popular one, and the old art for that too is.
Yeah.
Well, let's take a little bit break, and then if you don't mind, let's talk a little bit about your art.
Sure.
So back from the break. talking about the art, one of the coolest things about it is I think, and I'm not sure the newer people on Jeju really understood that the old school people, all my friends that have left Jeju, their houses are decorated with Magpie. Like, so throughout the world now,
Yeah, sure.
you know, it's hanging on walls in international schools and the States.
It's really
your
funny,
art.
actually. A friend of ours, a brewer from, Left Hand out of Colorado, he just sent me a
Yep.
text message. They're in Belgium, and there's a Magpie sticker on some old Belgian brewery
love
wall.
that.
And he's just like, can you believe this?
Yeah.
And like, it is
Yeah.
really hard to
Yeah.
believe because we never expected this to come, like, that Magpie would get to be this, you know?
Well,
like,
it's funny you bring up Left Hand. I have a Left Hand bumper sticker on my car
cool.
here in Jeju. I used to pour beer for them in Colorado,
Oh, awesome.
like at like the little local festivals. They would be in. They would always just say, "Alexis, you want to pour?" And I'm like, "You know, I do."
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, they're such
Yeah,
cool guys.
they're really
So
awesome.
yeah, but your art, it absolutely. I mean, people have it. It's not even just like tacked to walls.
Wait,
People have this
are
art.
you the artist?
No. We I
Eric's
wish
like,
I could
"Oh,
say.
no.
We've gone through a few generations of art, right? Like the original logo
Different
was
styles
done
and-
by Oh Hyun Kwan, who does Gutta Form as his design studio in Seoul. And then he did the original logo, original fonts and stuff like that. Then Kevin Benishek came in and it was called
My
Mute House,
favorite.
and now it's Okyo Champions. And he did our art for a while, and we had like the original style was like a very screen printed. Originally, maybe for the first year of Magpie, every poster was actually hand screen printed.
Oh, I didn't
one
know
of
that.
50.
Jesus.
But then we had to move to like a printing because we needed
Yeah.
too many of them.
Yeah.
So how important are these posters to? Because
I mean, I think it's part of our DNA. I think it's a really special thing of Magpie because I think it helps people understand craft beer. Like the idea that, yes, you maybe had a Maibach before, but you never had a Magpie Maibach. And that's different. And that's why craft beer is so special, that each brewery, even though you say like, oh, I love pale ales, but every one of them is slightly different. It has a slightly
Right.
different tweak to it.
Yeah, of
and
course.
the art kind of helps you sort of understand it or
Yeah.
what do you want to say, like almost... it comes second nature. You recognize it without recognizing it. you know?
Oh, I like that.
What is your favorite beer? Is it the
I mean,
IPA?
I drink our pale ale more than anything else that we make,
Right.
probably, followed closely by the Dongne Chingu, the Pilsner. But that's because I know usually if I'm drinking beer, I sit down, I drink a few of them.
Yeah.
If I'm having a one-off, like I like everything. Everything we make is usually because we say, that sounds really cool. And so, it just depends, you know,
Yeah.
like my fridge is full of everything because, it depends on if I'm
make
sitting
them.
down to session. Yeah, well, true. But like if I'm sitting down to like have a bunch of beers, then usually I'll stick with more classics.
Yeah. Right.
If we're sitting down to have one or two, or Tiffany, I'll split a can, then like I'll try the more experimental, the
Yeah.
bigger hoppy ones and stuff
The
like
porter
that.
for me is my favorite, but I can't have more than like two because they're so heavy. They're
Yeah.
so full.
It's a meal.
Yeah.
It's
It's
a meal in itself. Yeah.
The IPA has more calories than the porter does, actually. There's more sugar, there's more body in that beer, but the sort of like darkness, the richness of it makes it feel like that.
Yeah.
We try to say the porter is more like an iced Americano than it is like a chocolate milkshake or something like that, but that's just to kind of help people envision, you know, and I mean in Korea, iced Americano is probably the best-selling drink in the country, so getting that connection is usually pretty
Yeah.
strong.
So I'm not sure if this question is applicable, but what would be like for you as a brewery?
Yeah.
What would be like the holy grail or like the Moby Dick of a beer that you'd like to make?
What we're trying to get to, and it's hard because we spend so much time making these core beers, is like we really want to make these what they call like mixed culture fermentation. So what it would be is you use sort of like different types of bacteria, different types of yeast to kind of get these like really nuanced and complex beers. A lot of the time they're open fermented or they use wild yeast. So we'd like to kind of get this like open fermentation tank where it's like basically Jeju wild yeast that inoculates this beer. So it gives it sort of like a really interesting locality kind of thing. They tend to be kind of funky, barnyardy, sour, really complex. And then
What a
often
great description.
people will age them on fruits and things like this. So it's kind of a very Belgian tradition.
Like you got to go out into the forest, like Gotcha Wall, and like hunt down yeast or
Or
something?
yeah, I mean, what you would do is you take the beer and you let it cool down over, like, let's say overnight in
Okay.
some area that's got wild yeast. It could be here, just in like the orange
Wait,
fields or anything like that.
wild, like what? Huh?
I mean, basically, like, you know, makgeolli is a little bit complex because you use the nuruk for it, but it's basically it's a mixed fermentation culture that's basically wild from a location, and so it's kind of like instead of sort of collecting it and then adding it to the beer, you basically just leave the beer open, and that wild yeast blows on top of it and cools, and the yeast survives. You know,
Is
and
that
stuff like that.
something you can This is so ignorant. Is
No,
that just something?
Yeah, like,
it's even in the
can
beer
you
industry, it's
have
a very
wild
special
yeast?
thing.
Can you just find that? I mean,
It's
is
everywhere. It's everywhere. Like I
Okay.
mean, we work with. There's a local yeast lab. I say local. They're in Seoul. Or they're not in Seoul. They're just outside of Seoul. But they're new. They're just getting started. But
Cool.
they basically came down and took cultures from around like my house and around the neighborhood and
That
done
is
that.
wild.
And we haven't made like a specific beer with it yet.
Yeah,
We will
okay.
at some point.
So
But
you can have beers based on different neighborhoods based on the yeast
100%.
you have.
Yeah,
Is
and
this
I mean,
something-
sometimes you might find like I think even here there was different yeast from the brewery and different yeast at my house. So
Oh, sure.
you can get it from different neighborhoods and things like that. Some of it will make disgusting
This is
beer.
so-
Like some of
yeah.
it won't make good
Okay.
beer.
But do you just like? Is it just in the air?
It's in the air everywhere, yeah. I mean, for instance,
wild.
like, natural wines. Like, part of that
Oh.
is the fact that they don't add anything to it. They just basically, like, either leave the grapes or crush the grapes,
Right.
and the natural yeast is what ferments that.
Okay. Is this something other breweries are already experimenting with, or is this
There's
really new?
I mean, mostly, I think Soul Gypsy is a brewery up in
Okay,
Seoul that's
okay.
awesome and is really focusing on making those
Never
beers. And
even
then
heard of
Wild
that.
Wave from
Wild
Busan.
Wave.
And they make some really cool
Oh,
beers.
yeah.
They do some of that as well.
Okay. Wild
I
Wave's
think
one of
they're-
my-
I mean, I'm probably leaving someone out, and they're going to call me and be like, "You
Hey.
can give us a shout out too." But those are the two guys that come to mind most that are doing it. But I mean,
Yeah.
it's really interesting, cool
Yeah.
process. But it just takes time and dedication and a lot of effort from the team to kind of manage those things. So
It's a lot, hey?
yeah, we'd like to
Yeah.
get there, and we will get there.
Maybe
at some
one day
point.
when you start expanding in the if ever happens.
Do you think of getting into Makgeolli or other types of alcohols? Because
We've considered it. It's one of those things where it's time, effort, and money.
Right.
That
You
you
have
want
a
to
lot
put there.
going
And
on
we don't
just
have a
with
lot of
you.
space,
Yeah.
and the beer's still growing.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like if we do that, it takes away from other things. And
Yeah.
so, I mean, I think before we get into making other alcohol or Makgeolli or anything like that, I think there's a lot to do in beer still. But we'll see. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Yeah,
You know,
I mean, never say never.
I'm like, no, you can't go into Magpie before you make me a cider, or before you make me like a sparkly,
seltzer or
a seltzer.
something.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, Eric, you brought up one of the other things that I really enjoy with craft brewery, having lived in Denver and Colorado, which
Yeah.
is such
Huge
a
hub.
hub.
Yeah,
But one of the things I really like about Korea is you guys are all really good friends.
Certainly.
Not all, I'm not going to say all because now there's like so many more,
Yeah,
but
certainly.
the different breweries throughout. I mean, you guys get together as often as you can to
Certainly. Well,
drink together and
it's,
talk and share.
Yeah, there's kind of like, I mean, there's a big group of foreign brewers here. I think that the foreigners definitely led the first wave of the craft beer scene in Korea, and now the Korean, I would say probably the best new breweries are the Korean kids that are coming
Yep,
up, the Korean
yep,
guys that are making
yep,
new stuff, and so. Yeah, we probably, everyone's busy enough in the pandemic. It's been a couple of years where that's kind of faded a little bit,
Yeah.
but we definitely do get together. We
Yeah.
get phone calls, we do collaborations. I mean, Soul
Yeah.
Gypsy, we were, when he was building his brewery, I was messaging him being like, oh man, I'm so jealous of these new oak fermenters you're putting in. It's so cool. And he said, hey, I just put a beer in one. When it releases, I'll send you a box. and so
that's
he brought me a
awesome.
box on our 10th anniversary
yeah.
party.
Oh, that's
so yeah,
awesome.
we do a lot of that kind of
Yeah.
stuff where there's that geek beer. Guys were just down here and our brewing team met them. We're touring them around a little bit to show them Jeju. And so, yeah, there's definitely camaraderie. Like there's a little bit sometimes of I use the word like frenemies.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
there is some competition because
and there
the craft
should
beer,
be.
like the industry isn't growing as much as it feels like it's growing, and the convenience stores is growing. Actual tap handles, bars that want to have craft beer on tap aren't growing super fast. So
Right.
maybe it for a new brewery to come to Jeju, they're probably going to take a few of my tap handles, and that's okay. I'm not angry about it, but there's always a little bit of competition
Sure.
where can we keep those? Are we
Sure.
getting new ones, and how
Sure.
does that work? But I mean,
For the
that's
most part, yeah.
that's industry. That's
Yeah,
that's
that's
any
gonna
market.
happen, yeah.
So what is next for Magpie now that we're coming out of the pandemic? Knock on wood, hopefully.
Yep.
Events.
Definitely putting a focus back on our retail, I think, wholesale's growing and that's coming back, and I think that's going to be natural. So the team's really busy growing our wholesale again, but we're going to try to put a big renewed effort back into our existing retail as first step, events and some sort of just like, what do you want to say, like social planning, doing more stuff during the week where we want to try to start like a movie
Get
night
people
out here.
out again,
yeah,
right?
and sort
And-
of. I mean, people are itching to get out and do
Jesus.
something. So give them a reason to come out to
come out.
Magpie Brewery on a Wednesday, something like that.
Beautiful location and yeah.
And so that's kind of the next main step. And then after that, I'm not sure. Getting back into some collaborations and some other stuff like that
Yeah.
that we can do. And
Is there any exciting collaborations that you can share with us? Anything that's really interesting? Like the Vans
yeah,
thing.
I have a
is
really
so
cool one for
yeah.
Jeju too,
Yeah,
actually.
you do?
So we're releasing a collaboration gin with Toki Soju.
Stop.
Yeah, and
Oh, that's so cool.
it's a Jeju gin. It's actually using a whole bunch of citrus from
This is
Jeju.
so cool.
And that will launch in June, actually.
And
So we
you'll
haven't
sell
really
it?
announced it yet.
Okay.
I mean,
Ooh.
we've talked about it a little bit, but we haven't
Okay.
done too much marketing on it.
We'll have to get a couple. I love gin. I'm a
Oh,
big
cool.
fan
This
of
is
gin.
his.
Yeah. So we're working
Old
right
man.
now on can we sell it like we're trying to put like a draft
Oh, yeah.
basically
Yeah,
a gin and tonic or a gin and soda on
Something
draft
you
that's
could,
really
yeah.
easy to do,
Oh,
and then we'll
that's
sell it by the
interesting. Really
bottles.
cool, yeah.
I forget. I think we have 300 bottles is how much we
Oh,
made.
I'm so excited.
Not too much.
Oh, put my name on one of
We're
those.
gonna have to
yeah,
get a
we're
couple
good,
of those bottles. Gin
Yeah,
is
yeah,
fantastic.
it's super good too.
Yeah.
We've been sampling it with some like the cocktail bars in Seoul, and there's a couple bars that are like, can this be my house gin? Like, can I use this for that? So
How
like, sorry.
cool.
What is
The-
the- Can you tell us a little bit about the art for that? That's
So yeah, the art for it is actually super cool too.
Oh, wow.
We reached out to I know her through some friends. She is kind of famous for being a tattoo artist. Her name's Mickey Kim, and
Okay.
she does some really wild out there artwork. And so yeah, I won't go too deep into it. I'll
Okay.
let it release. I'll let it
Okay.
release and see it. But like, she did some really wild artwork. It's very not Toki. It's very not
Okay.
Magpie.
Okay,
It's kind of its
that's
own
important,
kind
I
of
would
thing
think,
that,
yeah.
where
so-
did the gin come from? Because we just
so
talked about
Toki,
Magpie.
Toki Soju, they have their brand is called Sunbi. Their Sunbi gin and vodka. That's a different series. And so yeah, I was just hanging out with Brand one night and talking about like, hey, would this be possible to do a private label bottling and do something that's like, very citrus forward? He's like, dude, I have a
That's-
recipe already.
oh, that's
it's
so
all using
cool.
citrus gin already. Like,
Yeah.
try the base
Yeah.
and what that is, and
Yeah.
then we'll kind of go from there. And so
it's so exciting.
Yeah.
it's
One
super
of my-
fun. And
yeah.
like kind of because it's our 10th anniversary, we're really trying to like go out there a little bit more with what we can do with those kind of collaborations. So that one, and then in fall I have a really interesting collaboration started where Eastlog, the clothing brand that does our sort of like internal stuff,
Okay.
we're going to do a collaboration with them where it's kind of based on like old workwear style stuff. They do like a kind of, let's say like heritage menswear kind of
okay.
stuff. So like a denim worker's jacket with embroidery and stuff like this that should be pretty cool. So
That does sound so little something with
yeah,
them.
we're hoping November that will
Okay.
launch, I think, is that
Okay.
one. That's kind of like out there too, but yeah, working on some other stuff.
It's so
That's
exciting.
fantastic,
I
yeah.
feel very lucky to have chosen to live in Korea at the time to see, not only are we seeing politics change here, but also social. Oh, sometimes I just lose my words.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
but things have changed so much in the 10 years that I've lived here, with everything.
Yeah.
But one of the really cool things I've just enjoyed is because I came from Denver where things were already happening. So you can really watch the birth of so many things. Like you were talking about Toki. I mean, there is just so many, Korea is blossoming with people wanting to do ideas and
Yep.
different things and take it to the next level. And Toki
100%.
Soju is certainly one of those.
Yeah.
Like that's just a treat to sip
yeah,
on. And
yeah. Again, I think
yeah.
too, like
Trying to
there's
do
a little
something.
bit like I think talking about sort of the foreign impact on that and what that relates to. Like Bran is also he's Bran and Doug, the
guy.
two founders, are both Doug is a Korean American and Bran is a white American, I guess you could say. But like it's kind of one of those things where sometimes it's just looking at something traditional in a different perspective that kind of gives it sort of like a kind of new breath or
Right.
new life, kind of
Right.
doing that, where taking soju and being very non-traditional with it is, I think, kind of like really helpful. Now we're seeing a whole bunch of more stuff come
Right,
through where,
right,
like,
and-
I don't know, it's not because of Toki, it's not necessarily because of that, but it did make people kind of think about it a little bit differently.
And open,
look
yeah.
at it.
And it's just so fun to see, like, and then, having a brewery that you can come and tour, like that's what Magpie did. And then
Yeah.
I told you before that we started recording, I just finally was able to go see Toki in Seoul. And
Yeah.
that style, I mean, that's just, we walked in, we're like, cool. But then we looked at the menu and you just get this a little bit of excitement to be getting to see new things in a
For
country
sure.
which hasn't had that before. So like,
100%,
their
100%.
cocktails, a beet cocktail.
Oh, I mean,
I had
the
a tomato cocktail there that blew my
cocktail scene
mind.
in Seoul now is like
Is-
one of the fastest growing globally. Like I
It's
forget
so
how many
exciting.
they went from having 0 in the top 50 list to like this year I think there's like 6 or something like that in the top 50 bars in Asia. And
Yeah.
cocktail scene is growing so fast
And I just-
amongst other
yeah.
things. Like I think
Amongst
like
other
the
things.
coffee culture too is like, I think we were here for the birth of the coffee culture, and now Seoul is
Yep.
considered one of the main coffee culture cities in the world, like with Oslo.
Well, and I
and
just
London
think
and-
that's so cool, though, that
Yeah.
but Magpie really was at the heart and the start of so many things.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's really exciting.
So now that we're just about done, let's get to our token, our staple Jeju 5.
Jeju 5.
Which is we're going to ask you 5 questions.
Okay.
And we
Spitfire.
want you to
Spitfire.
answer them as truthfully and as quickly as possible.
Okay. Uh-oh.
So where on the island do you go to get away?
We have a series of secret spots on the island that we refuse to tell anybody
You
about.
can-
I shouldn't say tell them about.
Yeah.
We refuse. We can only. The rule at Magpie is you can only bring people there.
Yeah,
you
you
can't
can't-
send them
you
pins.
can't give
You
directions,
can't send
yeah.
pins. You can't do that. So you
Yeah.
can bring people there. So
Yeah.
they grow. They're not so secret, but
Like, this is like a magpie.
No,
I mean, they're not even
They
Magpie. They're
had to
always
be-
yeah.
yeah,
With
they
with
had to be,
locals
like, with
and we have
locals
to be-
that took- yeah, that
that
took
have
them there
taught
the
us
first
about
place,
it.
yeah.
So like up near like I love Donnako. I think like going there off season is so cool. I mean, the water temperature is freezing no matter when you go, but going when there's no one there is the best. And we were talking about shared, history in Ontario, and like it reminds me of Ontario. It reminds me of like being up north in Ontario, and so I really love that spot.
Yeah, we're both from Ontario. We're both
Canadians.
Canadians, yeah, thank you.
Canadians. Next question.
Sure.
You go to a mart. What's your go-to beverage that you pick up?
What is my go-to beverage? Probably like, I don't know, like, are you talking alcohol or
Yeah,
non-alcohol?
so
Anything you want.
Oh, really?
okay.
Okay.
Usually most people pick alcohol. But
Yeah, sure.
I mean, like,
Soju,
I would
makgeolli,
say,
beer.
I forget the brand of it, but the pink bottle makgeolli is like the
Jeju
Jeju local.
makgeolli,
Yeah.
yeah.
So we learned a secret from Solhi, used to be our operations
Yeah,
manager.
yeah.
She would look at the dates and find the
Yep.
oldest date.
Yep.
The oldest date is
Yep.
the funkiest bottle,
Yep.
and so that's what we like the most.
Yep.
And so,
yeah, Jeju makgeolli. Well, most makgeolli only has like an expiry
Also-
date of 10 days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I always pick the
The oldest.
oldest
Tenth,
one
ninth
as
or
well.
tenth
Yeah.
day,
And the
yeah.
green cap. That's my secret for beer. You can't get it at the. You have to go to the NH mart.
Oh, okay.
The
because
green,
the green
cap is
cap
only sold at E-Mart because they get them in bulk.
Yeah.
That's why.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
But they get a different
Yeah, yeah.
price for them.
Yeah.
Cool.
So number 3,
So the makgeolli.
the coast, Hala or Orem?
I mean, I don't know. I would say coast, I guess. I don't know. I really like my corner of the island is our sort of like the northeast corner. Actually, all the way down to Songsan. I love that stretch of coast, but I ride my bike a lot, and so I like to go over on the way there and then coast on the way back is usually what I do. And so, yeah, I don't know. I guess like again, being Canadian, I'm not much of a beach guy. Like I like the beach obviously, but I like the fresh water better. I'm more of a lake guy.
Okay.
So, but yeah, getting in the forest is really nice.
Okay.
I actually haven't climbed Hala, so I haven't made the trip up there.
Fair enough.
So, yeah, I'm a little mixed, I guess, on anything like that. But I'd say, I guess, coast is what
Coast,
I
okay.
enjoy cruising the coast.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's something you think you know about Jeju that our listeners wouldn't know?
I don't know. We were talking about this too a little bit, where I end up like in my sort of like Bermuda Triangle. Like there's spots where I go to, and that's where I kind of
Yeah.
end up. I do think that. The food in Jeju is some of the best food in the country, I think. Mackerel sashimi is, if you don't eat mackerel sashimi, you're missing out on life. Like,
Okay.
that's kind of the best
Okay.
thing, I think, that
Okay.
and that's kind of a recent
Do
discovery.
you go to
last couple years.
Tapdong in that area? The street?
Oh,
the
I
sushi
forget.
Street, or?
The best spot I've been to is actually, I forget the city, but it's
Okay.
down in like the southern west
Okay,
corner. I forget that
okay.
little like fishing village there, but
Yep.
there's like some famous mackerel sashimi spot there that's
Okay.
amazing.
Well, you
There's
heard
another
it
one up
here.
in AWOL too that I didn't get to go to, but I did a cycling trip with some people and we split into barbecue and sashimi, and I went on the barbecue team, but they said it's like one of the best.
Okay,
there, too.
good to
But
know.
Anyways, yeah, that's awesome. That's one of my
Mackerel.
favorite
Okay,
things.
okay.
If there was something you would change about the island, what would it be?
I guess public transportation. It's hard because it's an island and it's rural and remote, but it takes so long to get places if you're going to use public transportation.
You know they're getting a tram system here, right?
Are they? I didn't know this.
Well, you'd know
Well-
that if you followed us on Instagram,
There you go.
Twitter,
Sure.
all that stuff.
But yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know that, but I think
Proposed.
that's something like that would be amazing because I know a lot of friends when I bring them down here, we talk about you've got to come to Jeju, it's so awesome, and they're just like, okay, well, we're gonna take the bus to get to here, and it's just like it's almost almost impossible to get around the island.
Yeah.
We
without
had
that.
Hyojung on a couple weeks ago about, and she's from Nomad Her, and she said the biggest issue that women travelers, solo women travelers have on the island is transportation.
Yeah. Huh. Wow.
So
And it's so interesting because it's changed so much in the 10 years that I lived here. So when other people say, oh, transportation is bad, I'm always like, oh, is it? Oh, no, I think it's quite good. And they're like, no, it's still quite bad. But that's how bad it was in the beginning.
Yeah.
And so, like, the change, we'll see.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I mean, I don't know. I always like the little undiscovered, the quiet places, but they never stay quiet for long. And that's like,
That's why
any change is like, that's inevitable, I guess.
I call it my secret beaches, the secret, not so secret beach.
Yeah.
You know, that's where I am today. Yeah, but there used to be a time.
unsecreted
The
beach.
unsecreted. There used to be a time you could I would go camping for a week and not see one soul. And now you just
Do you
can't.
remember when, I mean, I don't know if you guys showed us or whatnot, but like the side beach at Hamdok.
Yeah,
It used to be
yeah,
virtually
yes.
only filled with foreigners, and there was no one else
We
there. and it was
literally
really
called it
quiet.
the foreigner beach.
Yeah. And now it's like, it's just as busy
Oh,
as the main beach.
if not even more so because of it's such a small beach, so then it has that appearance of. Well, when I remember going, this is just a side note. I remember going and they were renting the chairs out,
Yeah.
and I was like, that's it. Now it's officially done. I was like,
hate that.
I hate that. So I saw it. I looked down and we put a mat down. They're like, no, you can't because this is where we're gonna sit. I was like, okay, and that's one more thing crossed off the list.
Yeah,
But it's
yeah.
it's bound to happen.
Sure.
It's bound to happen. But yeah.
Eric, thank you so much for agreeing to be on. I hope it was as much fun for you as it
Oh,
was
sure.
for
No,
us.
I had a great time as always.
Thank you so much. Always a pleasure.
So, most important question: is the tap open yet?
They are definitely.
All right, well,
I
we
see some
gotta
people
go.
trickling in. So
Yeah, we got to go. We got to get an afternoon beer on.
Yeah,
It's a
sure,
perfect
certainly.
spring day.
Cool.
Thanks again, Eric.
Awesome. No problem.